Here's a couple things that I got thinking about this morning. Told you just about my life history. I just thought I'd go into a little bit of detail here and there, you know. In '76, I was overseas, and like I said before, I got orders to DI school. Well, I started running. By the time I got ready to go to Parris Island, I've already known about the orders for a couple months. I started running. I got my time down to probably 20 minutes for the 3-mile run. Pull-ups were, 4. Sit-ups were in the 70s. I wasn't really as fit then as I was 5 years later. With that, everything takes practice. You can't make perfection by sporadic. You got to be constant. Like I said, I ran 5 miles a day, 13 and a half on Saturdays. So a marathon was nothing. Nothing. I averaged 8-minute miles. 2 hours and 47 minutes, and my marathon was over. No big deal. Anyways, getting back to that DI school, I went and supposed to check into this gunny sergeant role. I was a staff sergeant. No, I was a sergeant when I checked in. And I did the normal thing. I walked into his office, put my briefcase down, went up, stood in attention in front of his desk, and said, reporting as ordered. He literally tore into me. Well, I stood back, looked at him. He says, you look like you got something to say. Yeah, Gunny, I do. I took 2 steps to the right, bent over, looked at his chevrons, took 2 steps back to the left, and I said, with that shit on your sleeve, the way you just treated me, you lost my respect for your rank. And I turned around and walked out of his office. Oh, needless to say, he had a bone against me. We were on the obstacle course. Yeah, Matt knows about that. You got 8 or 9 different things in a circle. Rope climb that if you fall, you end up wet. And there's slide for life. That was the rope climb. You had dirty deeds, to where you had to jump on these logs at 3 intervals and go over, and you got a rope swing. Well, one day, I guess it's about halfway through, they went by the point system. If you got under 100 points, you were automatically thrown out. You could achieve points by inspections, the sporadic inspections that they had. If you got noteworthy, you got 5 points and this kind of crap. Well, Gunny Roll came up to me. I'm standing in line at the obstacle course. Gunny Roll came up and looked at me and goes, you're a wise ass. And I just looked at him and I says, you're nothing but an ass. He goes, how much you wager that I can beat you going through this obstacle course? Put your money where your mouth is, boy. Well, he got pissed. He told me that I would leave the school if I lost. then I'd quit the school. And if I beat him, I'd get 100 points. But if I lose, I have to quit the school. Now, I looked at him and I told him that wasn't fair. He looked at me and he goes, "Why isn't it fair?" That's just simple. You want me to quit? I'm not a quitter. Tell you what. You give me 100 points if I lose. If I win, get off my back. Well, Gunny Chandler, he was the DI in charge of another platoon. He overheard what I said. And he comes over and looks at me and he goes, "Sergeant Taylor, seems like that's a pretty good challenge. What do you say, Ro? I'll be the referee." Well, the whole school stopped. Because that thing between Gunny Rowe and I became school-wide. I was at an inspection one day, and I knew my uniform was perfect. You know, there was no question. You know, like we were taught. Pass, fail, no middle. I never flunked an inspection. I always got a noteworthy or an outstanding. So passing an inspection to me is like drinking a cup of coffee. It's just normal. Now, Gunny Rose stood in front of me, looked at me and told me there was a speck of dirt on my national defense. I looked down. Boom. He popped up, broke position of attention. When he said that, I clenched my fist. Clenching a fist, attitude. You want to punch me, Sarge? I recomposed, relaxed my hands a little bit because you still got to have them in a cup. And I just stood there. Well, by the time he got done, I lost 150 points. That put me down to like 101. You know, like I said, if you get below 100, you're kicked out of the school. So I'm sitting with 101. Now, that afternoon was the challenge at obstacle course. And I'm sitting with 101 points. Well, I told Gunny Chandler, if I win, 500. If he's going to take all those points for making up lies against me, I need the points in order to survive. Because I'm not going to quit. And I'm not going to get below 100 points where you people can kick me out. So Gunny Chandler agreed to it. 500 points if I win. So, if I lose, Gunny Rowe has to get off my back. Okay. Well, we started even. Now, he was like 5 years older than I was. So I made it through the first couple obstacles ahead of him, and then he caught up to me. We got to slide for life. I kind of struggled with that. He got ahead of me, slide for life. He was still ahead of me going through the uneven parallel bars. And then we got to the last obstacle. You know, this is a 3-story structure. You climb the ropes up to the top, and then you got to shimmy down on the back and run to the finish line. Well, he's about 3/4. He's between the 2nd and 3rd story when I got to the ropes. I gave that rope the hardest tug I could muster, and I started up that rope. The first thing I come to is his hands dangling, trying to grasp the hold of something, trying to grab a hold of the ropes. And then I seen his face, and then I seen his chest, and I went right on past him. Well, I got down on the other side, and as I'm going down between the 2nd and the 1st and 2nd story, he's still upside down, tangled up in the ropes. I busted a gut laughing, and I just took my time going to the finish line. Gunny Chandler came up to me, shook my hand. He goes, "I loved it. I'm going to have to talk to the major about you, Sarge." I said, "Thank you." And I went back and rejoined the platoon. Gunny Rowe put in a protest. Said that I cheated. Gunny Chandler went to my behalf and said, "No, he did not cheat. You were stupid. Any fool knows that you don't do the ropes like you did the ropes. I was watching you, Rope. You did the ropes wrong. When you do the ropes, your hands go on the upward, not the cross section. Because when I jerked the ropes, if he was grabbing the hold of the, it would have went into his palm. He was like this. His hand went through the ropes, which caused him to trip, and his legs got tangled all the way up to the thighs into the ropes, which resulted in him falling backwards and losing his hand grips because the fool was on the and not on the bottom. Well, anyways, we get back to the school, and I got my 500 points. The day of so-called graduation, I still had like 420 points. So that day at the obstacle course, I made out. Now, what happened after I failed to graduate? Told you I had to sign over $150. I refused to. I went to graduation in PT gear and sat in the colonel's chair. Major came over, told me I'm going back to the fleet, but I had to leave the parade deck in the graduation of DIs. I went back to the barracks. I knew I wasn't going to stay there, so I packed all my stuff. I figured I'd be going to the transit barracks, which, sure enough, within the hour, I was being taken over to the transit barracks. Well, everybody gets leave upon graduation. You get a 10-day leave period, and that was Christmas of '76. Well, when I checked into the transient, I told Gunny that was in charge of S1, because I had to go through him to get into the transient. I said, looks like I'm not taking any leave because of the situation. You guys are denying me my leave. So, might as well give me duty on Christmas. Oh, sure enough they did. Out at the rifle range. On the staff duty, for the base out at the rifle range. The rifle range was there. They were 4 or 5 platoons going through the rifle range that week. And here it is, Christmas morning. Well, went out there at 7:30. I didn't start till 8 o'clock, but you always show up early for your duties. Well, I read the orders pertaining to that post. Okay. During that time, I was reading Lewis L'Amour westerns. Had a whole collection of them, so I took a couple with me. And I figured I'd be reading all day. Well, I get out there, and they got a pay telephone right outside the duty hut. There's a pay telephone. And on holidays and Sundays, recruits are allowed to call home, which is no big deal. Well, that Christmas morning, about 9 o'clock, there was a lot of talking out in the hallway. I walked out in the hallway. All the recruits, bang, no attention, standing in line, no talking. I popped up and I said, look, I'm not your babysitter. I'm not your drill instructor. I'm the duty here. Look at it this way. Pretend I'm standing here and be exactly like you were when you first saw me. I'm going back into that room now. If I hear one more word, the phone, I'm going to put off limits and it's going to be broken. Clear? Naturally, everybody, sir, yes, sir. I went back into my office. Just as soon as I disappeared from their eyesight, I overheard one of them go, son of a bitchin' lifer. I turned around, walked outside. The man that just said those words, step out. Nobody stepped out. I reached up, hung up the phone on the recruit that was talking to his parents. I just hung it up. And I said, the phone's out of order. Go back to your platoons, and I will not sign no paperwork. Get out of my sight. Unless the man that said that steps out. Well, these two guys, one behind and one in front of, the guy in front of him turns around, grabs a hold of this kid. The guy behind him just grabs a hold of him and pushes him out. And I looked at him in my office. So the kid went and stood at attention in front of the desk. I took my phone off the receiver and I looked at the recruit and I said, make another phone call. And if you talk to the person that you were talking to when I hung up, tell them that I will not apologize for what I did. Because I am not a son of a bitch. I'm a human being. And my name is Gene. I went in my office. I looked at the recruit. I said, give me your chit. He gave me his chit. And I wrote on it, phone denied. Now, after a recruit makes a phone call, we got a clock. I'm supposed to write down the time, point, seconds. they've got, depending on where the platoon is, minutes to get back to their platoon according to that clock. Well, I looked up at the clock and it was something like 8:17. And I looked at the recruit. I said, what time's that clock say, recruit? He turned, looked at it, came back, looked at me and said, 8:17.30, sir. Yep, you're right. 8:07 that 30. You're late, you son of a bitch. Now get out of my face. That recruit looked at me, stunned, turned and ran. Well, I got on the phone and I called the platoon, told the drill instructor that was working, add 10 minutes. It's really 8:17. I put down 8:07 because the man called me a son of a bitch. Son of a bitch and lifer when my back was turned. I told him what happened. He said he'd take care of it. Okay, no problem. Well, about 11 o'clock that morning, this LT comes in, stands in front of the desk, and I looked at him. I'm reading Lewis the Moore, and I looked at him. What can I do for you, sir? He looked at me and he goes, don't you come to attention when an officer comes in here? No, sir, I don't. What can I do for you, sir? You denied one of my men making a phone call this morning. You will let him make that phone call. He'll be here in a half hour. Excuse me, sir. You want that man to make a phone call. You put him in your personal car and take him to Main Side. That man steps a foot in here while I'm here. I will call my ODO and tell him that I'm walking out and I'll see the general tomorrow morning. Read my orders. I can do that. Well, Lieutenant didn't believe me. He looked at me and said, show me. So I showed him. I showed him where it was written in my orders that if anything happens that goes against those orders, I can call the officer of the day, Main Side. Tell him what happened and that he needs to get a replacement here because I'm gone now. And that I will explain my actions to the general tomorrow morning. Now that was written in the orders. Apparently they've had some trouble out there, and the general's taken personal interest on that little duty hut because the general is the one that signed the orders. Well, that didn't happen. I was there. The kid never showed up. Because the lieutenant left after he read the orders. I did not see nothing. Well, next morning I got relieved at 8 o'clock. And I always had to report to the gunny at S1 basically every morning. find out exactly when my orders are coming, because waiting on orders there, Paris Island is a high-vis thing, and they want you out of there as soon as possible, and things can change a moment's heartbeat. Well, when I left there at 8 o'clock, I got to the S1 section about 8:15, and the gunny just looked at me and he goes, "You're wanted over to headquarters." Apparently what happened yesterday is highlighted and flagged. You're to report Colonel Thompson or Tommy or something like that. Colonel Thompson. Okay, Gunny, no problem. So I went to headquarters. The headquarters is a big place, glass doors. There's about 8 of them in the front, glass doors. I walked in, and his office was quite evident where it was. So I reported into him, as per Marine Corps. Well, the colonel was standing there, looked at me, and said, "I read your report. You got anything to add to it?" "No, sir." I was very specific as to what happened while I was standing duty out there. He said, "Okay, I'm waiting for the lieutenant to show up here, because he's trying to bring charges against you." And I said, "Yeah, I kind of figured that." Well, that lieutenant came in, and the colonel popped up and said, "Okay, Lieutenant, let's hear your side of it." Well, the lieutenant started talking. And then the lieutenant's hand went up, or the colonel's hand went up. The lieutenant shut his mouth. The colonel looked at me and said, "Gunny, I'm taking your written statement as the truth. Lieutenant, you're giving me lies. Gunny, when are you supposed to receive your orders?" "Any day now, Colonel. Any day now. I'm gonna make a phone call. I suggest you pack today, because you'll be going off this island tomorrow morning, going back to the wing. Thank you for what you did yesterday." "You're welcome, sir." Stuck out his hand, I stuck out mine, shook hands, I walked out the door. When I shut the door, I just stood there, because I wanted to hear what was going on. That colonel read him the riot act, started at the shoe, went to the head, back down to the other shoe, did nothing but chew that nut's ass. Well, after the chewing, I kind of took off. I went to the big wide glass doors. That lieutenant came around the corner. I opened up the door for him, did the arm gesture. "After you, sir." Look, I got the most hateful, resentful look. I hope somebody straightened out that lieutenant in the time that he had left concerning how you do things in the Marine Corps, because he was nuts, totally. Well, I took the colonel's advice, and when I went back to the barracks, I seen the gunny, and I just seen him for GP. You know, I did not plan to see him. I wasn't ordered to see him, but in order to get to the barracks, he had to go through where he worked at. Well, I just went in the door, and he looked up and He goes, Gunny, come here a minute. So I went over and he goes, looks like your orders came through. You'll be leaving tomorrow morning. Wow. That was quick. How'd it happen so fast? The colonel likes you. And you need to get off this base. That's how much he likes you. Well, I went and packed and got my orders and left the next morning to go to the air wing. But just that little thing, the way he said that, the colonel, like, I did not know whether to take it positively or negatively. But I was glad it happened. When I got to the air station, I joined VMFA 251, and that's when I met Cpl Maple. Cpl Maple was been there for a couple years, then busted Lance Corporal, and then got promoted again, and then busted, and then promoted again. I went upstairs, looked at the man's SRB. He was a good worker. I respected him. Well, after about 4 months, just a couple months watching him work, he never failed me. He never took shortcuts. He never, if he didn't know, he asked. He was always hitting the books. I had duty one time, and I went to the barracks, and he was in the barracks. And he had a 4790 with him, which normally doesn't happen, because once you get away from work, you want to stay away from work. I don't think Maple knew that I had the duty, because I don't broadcast crap like that. Ain't nobody's business but mine if I got the duty or not. So when I caught him in the barracks at the 4790, I liked him even more. Because here's a kid that's taking initiative. Nobody really liked him except me. He was in every squadron on that base, and you're talking 5 squadrons. They kept putting him on mess duty or barracks duty, get him away from the shop. And his pros and cons during the pro and con days weren't that flattering. They were enough as Lance Corporal to promote him to Corporal every time he got busted to Lance Corporal because somebody got pissed off at him and busted him. So anyhow, I liked him. I found out that he was married, told me he loved his kid, and loved his wife. And, I talked to the Sergeant Major about him. Sergeant Major was going by what was, not is. Well, I convinced the Sergeant Major that if we get his wife here, you got a potential career man there for what I've seen of Cpl Maple. Well, Sergeant Major got some orders. Sergeant Majors can do that. He got some falsified orders, and we got Cpl Maple's wife paid for down to Buford. And we also got her some extra money that I didn't even know about, but the Sergeant Major knew about, for the time of period that they were separated. Something like $2 a day separation pay or some crap. So when they got together, they started their family. They had about $900 in the bank. which surprised the hell out of me. I asked the sergeant major, where were you when I needed the money? But anyways, I took Maple out to this one apartment complex that I rented. I rented it for $90 a month. It was a one-bedroom. Well, there was 3 rooms in there, but only had 1 bedroom. For $90 a month. That was the first place that Pam and I lived at. Now I took Maple out there and we talked to the landlord, and it was the exact same landlord as it was 4 or 5 years earlier when I rented it. Now the cost of it went up to $400 a month, and when I rented it, I had a oh geez, I think it was a '72 Ford. It was not a bad car, but I re-enlisted and bought a new car, and I just gave that car to the landlord. He had a daughter that just turned 18. She just got a driver's license. She needed a good car. That was a good car. So I just gave it to him. You know, he's ex-military, so he accepted it. Well, when I took Maple out there and found out that it was the same landlord, and you know, him and I talked, he didn't really remember me. Okay? Because I was always at work. But he remembers the car that I gave him. Well, because I gave him the car, he told Maple, well, the first $400 is because of Gene, because he gave me that car. Your security deposit was also on Gene because of that car. But come next month, $400. But a security deposit was $300 plus the $400, $700 is what they started out at. And he also popped up and he goes, and your rent doesn't start until the day that your wife and child get you. That'll be the day that your rent's due, every month. Well, Maple stayed there for like 9 days by himself before his wife and his child got there. And things were looking pretty good. Well, about 2 months later, I get this phone call on a Sunday morning. Maple had duty Saturday at the barracks. And he comes home Sunday morning and there's a note that she's out of here. Her and the child can't handle it, they're gone. Maple calls me up. I bring Maple out to the house, and him and I talked. I told him don't turn against the Marine Corps because of this, because the same thing can happen in civilian life as in Marine Corps life. So don't. And your rent's paid. I'd stay there and then move back into the barracks. Give you plenty of time to get your act together. And when you take into the barracks what you need, instead of doing it while you're emotional. So just you got about 3 weeks of rent left, so just take your time with it. Well, that's what he did. I talked to the landlord. There was no damage, everything was good to go. Maple still had like $400 in the bank, and his life was pretty well. solid except for that part. Well, about a week later, Sergeant Major calls me into his office. Apparently what happened was the girl met this guy in the bar while Maple was having duty and decided to take off with him because he promised her the world. Well, they got to Dallas, Texas, and the guy told her that, you know, you can have the world, but I don't want the kid. She kills the baby. And the baby's only probably 11 months old, maybe a year, and kills the baby. Well, she gets arrested for it, naturally. Dallas is real good at that kind of stuff. But Maple's mom and dad, first grandchild, and it's Marine Corps' fault that that baby was killed. They want to fry and diss the man held responsible. Well, I ended up with a special fitness report concerning that incident. And that was a special fitness report. It covered no dates. It was just because my other fitness reports were outstanding. But that special fitness report dealing with that death was my thorn, along with my second thorn being the special fitness report I got for what happened in DI school. So those two thorns created me 10 years as E6 before I got promoted to E7, because Colonel Doyle had to take care of those two fitness reports before that time. So anyhow, that's basically why I spent 10 years as E6 in the Marine Corps. And with that, I'm going to close. Thanks for listening to me, and thanks for reminding me of all the fun I had. So, anyway, have a beautiful day, and may God bless.